I wish I could play you the whole movement. But now we're going to listen to the very end. Listen to the fifth variation. Listen to someone who knows he's dying. Listen to someone who knows that this will be the end of his series of piano sonatas. Listen to the trills that he uses. Feel the emotions. Feel the calm and the repose he has as his entire life is going to hell. Thomas Mann, the Nobel Prize-winning German novelist, noted that there was a wide gap here between the bass and the treble, between the right hand and the left hand, the high notes and the low notes, what he called a yawning abyss that evoked for him heaven and earth. So this lasts about 4 minutes, a little over 4 minutes. I'd like to play for you the last variation. And as you listen to what you think Beethoven is trying to say here. Think about what message he's trying to give us. I don't know what you heard in that music. I think it's stunningly beautiful myself. The pianist who played that, Andras Schiff, who also played that here at Hill Auditorium earlier this year, he finds this a deeply religious piece of music. He thinks it's a song of thanksgiving. It's a song of someone who, in the middle of hard times, is expressing joy and gratitude and grace be to God for simply being able to get up in the morning and see the sunrise. And I think listening to the music, I can see that why Schiff sees it that way. And I think it can serve as a reminder of something that I think we don't do often enough when we care for our patients. We ask our patients all kinds of incredibly intimate questions about their lives and what they do and exactly how they do it and with whom. We rarely ask them about their religion. We rarely ask about spirituality. And there are lots and lots of polls and surveys that show that our patients would like us to. Our patients wish that we would. This isn't about your religious feelings. This is about taking care of patients. And so I think that's one of the lessons one can draw from this music. There's another relevant point for medicine here, and it has to do with disability. Beethoven was deaf. Beethoven had been going deaf for 20 years. Beethoven was deaf as he could be when he wrote this music, and he never, ever heard it. Not even close. So how could he write something as beautiful, as elegant, without being able to hear it? And how should that make us think about disability and what it means to be disabled and what it means to be missing one of your bodily functions and one of your senses? I think we should think about that. What if we could suddenly find the gene that caused deafness and wipe out deafness all over the world? Would that be a good thing? Maybe. Maybe not. What if Beethoven had had hearing? One never knows. But it should make us think about what it means to be disabled and what disabled people can do and can create. I'd like to turn now to works of art that have dealt with the ultimate end of this, which of course is death, the end of the life cycle. I'd like to turn to some objects from the Chang Gallery, not far from here. If you go over there right now, you can see, for example, this wonderful earthenware dog. This was placed in a tomb. It used to be thought that those who died needed people to take care of them, and there was a time when kings were buried with live humans and animals. Thanks in part to the teaching of Confucius, clay figurines were thought to suffice, fortunately for the dogs, I guess. So this is a wonderful piece of art that is something that was put in somebody's tomb to help look after them. You can see the dog standing there at attention. It's got a nice harness on. Now the spirit was thought to roam free. These are from the Tang Dynasty. These are a pair of tomb guardians that traditionally came, one with a human face and one with an animal face, from the golden era of Chinese art and culture. They were protecting from evil spirits, but they were also protecting the soul of the deceased from getting out of the tomb and perhaps bothering the people who are still alive, who might not want to have to continue to deal with the issues that might arise. So let's talk about the Orchid Pavilion gathering. This is an elegant hand scroll. Again, as I've said, it's over in the museum. That celebrates a famous historical event, a literary gathering of 41 scholars celebrating the annual Spring Purification Festival at the Orchid Pavilion on the third day of the third month of the year 353. The literati here were enjoying a ritual drinking game in which glasses of wine were placed on leaves and the leaves were floated down the stream, and if a poet could not recite a suitable poem, he would have to drink a cup of wine. You can think of this as kind of beer pong for sophisticates. Now, what makes this painting so important, one of the reasons, is if we look here at this area, we see here the famous Chinese calligrapher Shan Zhu, perhaps the greatest of all Chinese calligraphers. Interestingly enough, his hobby happened to be raising geese. He produced a preface to this gathering that is a classic of Chinese art and literature, and when I mentioned it to some people who know about Chinese art, you immediately get a reaction that is, of course, this is one of the greatest works of art that has yet been written. Now, he's sitting here at a table writing a preface that describes the event, and I'd like to read you some of the quotations from that preface because I think they have a lot to say about his feelings about life and death and aging. It says, "Today, the sky is bright and the air is clear, with a gentle breeze that is flowing freely. When looking up, one can see the vastness of the heavens, and when looking down, one can observe the abundance of things. This makes me think of the Beethoven we heard, the gap between the treble and the bass, the relationships between heaven and earth. But that abundance may be illusory. When a person meets with joy, he will temporarily be pleased and will feel content, but he is not mindful that old age will soon overtake him. A warning about the nature and the finitude of life. It's very easy when you're young not to think about the fact that you are going to age. It's very easy to feel content and not to appreciate that you may not always be the beneficiary of all that you are at this moment. And I think that's an important lesson for us all, and it's especially important for those of us that care for people who are ill and who, in fact, are losing that health that they once had. I most certainly know that it is false and absurd to treat life and death as one and the same, and it is equally absurd to think of dying at an old age as being the same as dying at a young age. When future generations look back to my time, it will probably be similar to how I now think of the past. So he's making a couple of points that I think we could talk about for some time. What's the difference between dying at an old age and dying at a young age? Why do we think of them differently? Should we have different resources available to the old and to the young? When future generations look back to my time, it will probably be similar to how I now think of the past. We will, at some point, people will look back at us and look back at what we have done, and they will look back at us the same way that we look back at the past. And we need to appreciate that and realize that we are but one in a long sequence of people who have come before us and people who are to come after us. He wrote of enjoying the beauty of the day while relating to the finitude of life. I'd like to end my artistic examples with another example about the finitude of life. I'd like to play for you some music by Richard Strauss. Strauss was a 20th century German composer. In his youth, he wrote a tone poem called Ein Heldenleben, which is a bold and brash story of a hero who goes forth and conquers all. He's a hero. He wins. But then life happened. Strauss lived through hell. Strauss lived through Germany during the Second World War. He saw the devastation that was caused and inflicted upon him. And after the war, he went into exile in Switzerland, where at the age of 84, he wrote his four last songs. And I'd like to play you the last of those four last songs with the text by Joseph van Eichendorff. And here's what I'd like you to listen to. One of the ways to talk about what you can listen to is what Philip Roth, the American novelist, had to say. He praised the four last songs. He said, "For the profundity that is achieved not by complexity, but by clarity and simplicity. For the purity of the sentiment about death and parting and loss. For the long melodic lines spinning out and the female voice soaring and soaring. For the repose and composure and gracefulness and the intense beauty of the soaring. For the ways one is drawn into the tremendous arc of heartbreak. The composer drops all masks and at the age of 84 stands before you naked, and you dissolve." Listen to the calm acceptance. Listen to the completeness. It's much more lush than the Beethoven we listen to,